We are now ready to move on to the last part of our review of history, the emergence of large national or government banks beginning in the 17th century. The most important of all is the Bank of Amsterdam. Following a period of uncertainty and monetary maladjustments of all kinds, the Municipal Bank of Amsterdam was established in the year 1609, with a statutory obligation to maintain at all times a 100% reserve ratio. 2 burgomasters would visit regularly, each week, to count the holdings in gold, look at the deposit accounts, and certify under oath that the two coincided. And documentary evidence shows that the Bank of Amsterdam remained unscathed for 150 years, while it followed these principles required by law. What income did the Bank of Amsterdam receive? Well, it received a certain modest amount for every 1,000 deposited, and that amount was sufficient to cover the bank's overhead costs and generate a small profit. A bank which adheres to these principles for a century and a half inspires immense confidence in the financial system. And this was proven on various occasions when panics broke out. For instance, when the King of France nearly conquered Amsterdam, all the merchants were horrified and rushed to withdraw their money, and they withdrew their deposits to the last gold shilling without any problem, because the Bank of Amsterdam observed a 100% reserve ratio. And this event boosted prestige and confidence in the bank even further. Amsterdam came to be the safest and most important financial market, and with that, Holland became an economic centre, at the forefront of all European commercial activity, and the envy of all other European countries. In fact, economic theorists as influential as David Hume and Sir James Stewart, and even Adam Smith, do not fail to mention the great prestige of the Bank of Amsterdam, which acted with a 100% reserve ratio. Hume expressly states that a market economy requires a banking system with a 100% reserve ratio, as was employed by the Bank of Amsterdam at the time. Sir James Stewart writes the same. Adam Smith was more inclined to accept the appropriation of demand deposits and credit expansion funded by unbacked paper currency. However, you can read the comments he makes about the Bank of Amsterdam in The Wealth of Nations, his seminal work. He even writes that a fire broke out soon after the bank was established, and some gold coins were damaged. And proof that the bank maintained a 100% reserve ratio lies in that 100 years later, when people went to withdraw their deposits, they received those coins, which were a little misshapen from the heat of the fire that had occurred almost a century earlier. Well, the Bank of Amsterdam enjoyed so much prestige that a number of banks were founded in the rest of Europe and modelled on the Bank of Amsterdam. Such was the case with the Bank of Hamburg, the Bank of England, and the Bank of Stockholm. It was also true of the forerunner of the Bank of Spain, the Banco De San Carlos. I have the original articles of the incorporation charter of the Banco De San Carlos, an original copy, which incidentally cost me a bundle. Anyway, one of the articles explicitly states that the Banco de San Carlos was being modelled on the Bank of Amsterdam, in the square of Amsterdam. Nevertheless, unfortunately, none of these other banks was faithful to its founding objective of maintaining a 100% reserve ratio, and except for the Bank of Amsterdam, sooner or later, all fell victim to authorities' thirst for liquidity. They ended up operating with a fractional reserve, causing bubbles to form, and eventually provoking financial crises, along with deep economic recessions. Thus we have the case of the South Sea Bubble, which devastated the entire English economy due to the artificial credit expansion generated by the Bank of England. The Bank of Hamburg also abandoned its principles, and as for the Bank of Stockholm, it was established with rigorous standards based on the operation of the Bank of Amsterdam, with 2 departments, one for deposits and another for loans. The deposit department with a 100% reserve ratio. But in the end, it also began to violate this principle, ran into difficulties, failed, and the Bank of Stockholm became the Swedish National Bank in the year, take note, 1668. It was the first officially established government bank in the modern world. 1668, the Swedish National Bank. As a matter of fact, In celebration of the tercentenary of its founding, the 300th birthday of the Swedish National Bank, in 1968, the Nobel Prize in Economics was created, financed by the Bank of Sweden, the Swedish central bank, because when Mr. Nobel started the Nobel Prizes, he could not imagine that such a thing as economic science would warrant the creation of a Nobel Prize. The truth is that it is highly debatable whether the Nobel Prize in Economics has merit, since it was created and above all financed by a corrupt government bank. Do you not agree?